Hey folks, I just wanted to do some construction guidance video on the ball box. As you can see, I am using a compound miter box. You can use a handsaw and a wooden miter box as needed. I'm going to use this one because it's what I have and it's much easier for me to do. Pile of wood on the left, going to start cutting. So first thing you want to do is take your 8-foot 2x4s, measure them out. Make sure they're full 8-footers. Sometimes people get those ones that are cut a bit shorter for interior stud walls of a house. Make sure you get the 8-footers. Mark it for 4 feet. Mark it well with a speed square and cut 2 of those in half to make 4 vertical legs. Here I'm going to cut the end of another brand new 2x4. This is the third piece of wood. Going to miter that corner. You can see on the right hand side it's mitered. I'm marking the left side at 37. And as you can see, I put a diagonal so I remember which way to cut. You want to basically be cutting in on both sides. You want to make them mirrored. Right there, you can see which way I want to cut it at 37. You can see the one on top is the one I cut pristine. I've pushed it slightly back from the next piece of wood. I'm going to line it up to that next piece of wood, and I've already done that on the left-hand side and drawn a line. Makes it easier to cut if you're using a miter box. I'm going to cheat. I've extended my arm out to exactly where 37 inches will be. And that way I can just simply push my piece of wood out to the roller stop there and know that I'm going to get exactly 37 inches every single time. When I'm done, you see I have 4 legs on the right hand side. Those are 48 inches long, and I have 3 sets of 4, in other words, 12 37-inch long pieces of wood that have been mitered. The one on the items underneath the table saw were extra. Line them up. You can see that the legs are standing up vertically. This is what it'll look like. You basically start with the bottom of the box. I just lined them up here so you could see. This is a view of it lined up. They're not screwed together yet. Just wanted to show you how they're lined up. I prefer to use a countersink bit. I like pre-drilling, even though these are kiln dry Douglas fir. This is not pressure treat wood. You could use pressure treat if you want. If you're going to leave it outside continuously forever, pressure treat's probably good. It just doesn't paint the way I wanted it painted. You'll see at the end. If I countersink, I get a drill all the way through, and I get the countersink so my screw heads aren't showing. Basically line it up, put 1 screw in each corner from each side. There's 2 on each, you'll see. And then just make sure you're all squared up before you put the next screws in. So you can see that I've got the ones on the bottom in the distance there. That's the bottom. So I'm doing the tops now, and you can see I pre-start a couple screws with wood, and you can see that the screws have a smooth, non-threaded end to them with the bugle tip. That smooth end allows them to be sucked in as you go further in. Don't worry about that little gap. What's going to happen is when you screw it all the way in, that gap gets all sucked in. Don't worry about it. Then once you've got the top in, you can actually set the next set of screws. So the top screws in those little pockets are already in. This is me putting the next screws in. Now you'll note that you're not going to get a square box immediately. So you can see if I measure diagonally, I have 54.5. If I measure on one diagonal, and if I get the other diagonal, I have 53.25. So that's not even square. Easy way to square it up is just take a ratcheting tie down and tighten that up on the long one until both diagonals equal each other. At this point, I'm going to measure down for the next piece of wood. That's going to be at 18. The bottom of the piece of wood is going to be at 18. The bottom of the next set of 4 2x4s is going to be at 18, the bottom. Okay, as you can see here, I've placed one of them in there already. I find it easier, you can see on the left and the right, I've stuck a piece of wood in there, spacers. That way I don't have to measure everything and I can get it exactly the way I want it. So those two pieces of plywood, they're just thrown in there temporarily. I lift the stud up into those temporary pieces of wood and I screw it in. Now you can see on the right hand side easier, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 little dashes. I stuck some finish nails, some brad nails through there that protruded from the back, probably only about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. That allows me to stick it on that 2x4 and it won't go anywhere. Just a little trick if you want to use that. And then you could just pull it straight off. No big deal. But those little spacers really help. You could see the spacers in there. You could see I'm putting it in on that one with the tie down still in place. Now with the tie down still in place, I am putting the bottom of the box on top of a 4x8 sheet of plywood. Pretty simple. Trace around it. And what you'll see is you have a tracing. Now I'm going to put a speed square or a square on top of those 2 points where they didn't clear, and I'm going to just simply cut it out with my circular saw. Once I cut that 2 sides out, because, well, 2 of them were factory edges because I put my box right up to the corner and I only had to cut 2 sides. Drop it on top. These are 1 5/8" exterior grade bugle head screws as well. Just deck screws, whatever you want to call them. Pop it on top, screw it down. I put 5 on each side. Please keep your screws away from those corners. You don't want them at the corners. Nip the corners off with your handsaw, jigsaw, not table saw, circular saw, whatever you want. Nip them off just so that it's rounded. That's one of the advantages of the designs of this box. It is a rounded corner, and I didn't have to worry about strengthening the corners with 2 2x4s in the corner. You could just simply use that single vertical with 2 2x4s coming into the single vertical. That's rounded off. Next, cut your wood to that 37 inches wide. Cut one sheet of it on a table saw. I just literally put a square edge, straight edge on top of my piece of wood, and I run my circular saw right up against that, and I get a perfectly straight. You can cut it any way you want, take more time if you're not using a straight edge like I have used. Cut them to length, height, width, 37 wide, 18 high. Pop them in with 3 screws on top, 3 screws on the bottom. Simply screw it in. Next, drop your box, flip it over, drop your box so that you can trace the bottom onto, you can see where the first one was cut. This one's going to be cut with the plywood in place. It's going to be slightly larger because it has plywood on the sides. So you could see at the top right corner there that it's slightly larger because you have to allow for the plywood. So you just flip it over, pop it on top, trace it out again. As you can see, I've placed it in place. It's not screwed in yet. I was trying to see where I wanted to put my holes on the top. I didn't use any of those holes. You'll see in a moment. Screw it in. This is unscrewed right now. Screw it in place after you've decided where you want your holes. When you do decide where you want your holes, it's best to drill a hole and then use your jigsaw. Go nice and slow. Nobody's in a hurry. Take your time and drill out 4 holes. Drop it back on top. I've indexed where I wanted it, so I knew what corner matched where I had originally cut it for. So there's a little A underneath each of these, so I know exactly where to put it. Screw that top on top. Now let's drill the holes for the bungee cords that are going to go across. So you can see I put the tape measure all the way down to the bottom of the plywood. It is not sitting on top of that bottom 2x4. It is sitting on the top of the plywood. Measure up 9 inches, 13.5. So every 4.5 inches starting at 9. You don't need to put a bungee cord at the bottom because the 2x4 at the bottom is 4 inches high. It's actually 3 5/8 high. If anybody knows dimensional lumber, a 2x4 is actually 1 5/8 by 3 5/8. So measure up to 9, 13.5, so forth and so on. Mark all your lines. You can see some pluses in the middle there. That's where I'm going to be drilling my holes. I've moved them in to 1.5 inches. That's where I want to drill an inch and a half in and at every 4.5 inches. A ball is 9 inches, folks. That's why I chose 9. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Drill your holes straight through. Hand drill's fine, doesn't have to be perfect. I put 2 coats of primer on it, and now this is with 2 coats of color paint. You'll know why it's painted green and blue in a moment. Please note the back bottom. As you can see, I changed my design ever so slightly. I put a second 2x4 across the top. So see how the back has two 2x4s high now. And it has a couple little return 2x4s on the sides there. You can see the little tiny ones about 4 inches long kind of sticking out on the sides. That's so that the screws coming all the way through that I was using 4-inch screws. They had something to bite into as well. I really wanted that second 2x4 on top in place. You'll see why. I did have to cut one more 2x4, 37 inches long, same as those ones at the beginning. So at the beginning, instead of 12, you'll need 13. It's outside, a little bit better light so you could see how it's been painted. Another view of that. Now, what I did for my bungees, it's too difficult to try to do it all at once. So I actually did individual rows of bungees. So I had one bungee coming out. My spool was at the bottom on the left there. So I fed it into that 2x4 on the left. I went to the far back left, far back right, near right. And then you could see it's coming back between my thumb and forefinger, it's coming back. I'm going to now take that bungee cord and put it back through the exact same hole. So I'm going to have knots on both sides of that one 2x4. You'll see in a second. So this is me sticking it right back through. As you can see, that one 2x4 has double cords going through it. So make sure when you drilled your holes, it'll fit 2 pieces of bungee. Tie a knot on it, on the one that you just came through, the end of it. Pull it all the way back around where you fed it through originally, because you didn't feed it through from your spool of bungee. You didn't feed it through tight. You wanted to tie the knot first. Now you pull it all the way back through. So this is me pulling it all the way back through. The spool is that lower right-hand side. My spool's off camera there. I'm going to pull it really tight, one side, then another side, then another side, then another side, all the way back to there. And then I'm going to heat up a breakaway knife, any metal knife. So I heat it up with a little handheld butane torch. That butane torch helps me light my burlap for my beekeeping. So you can use any of those torches off of Amazon, Harbor Freight, wherever you want to get it. They're very handy for lighting fires and charcoal grills and basically anything. Heat that knife up pretty good. And what you're going to do is you're going to press gently through the bungee cord to cut through it that way with heat, not by cutting it. When you cut through bungee cords, they will fray. So using the heat, it seals the ends. So now you can see all rows in. You can see that there's a series of knots on that left front 2x4. There aren't any on the near right, the far right, and the far left. There's no knots. Here's the other side of that one that had knots on it. You can see that there's knots on this side of the 2x4. In this way, I could tighten up any one bungee or replace any one bungee by using this method. I then used a Cricut Maker to put the Hartford Athletic, who's going to keep this ball box at their events, hence the blue and the green. I'm a huge Hartford Athletic USL soccer fan. And then the plexiglass in the center, you'll see in a moment. The Goals Council, obviously, this is where the creation of these ball boxes has originated. The Stack Sports Goals Council really has done a fantastic job trying to get these ball boxes out there. You'll also note that second 2x4 on the bottom there was because I wanted to use very large casters. These are 4-inch casters purchased at Harbor Freight, very reasonably priced, galvanized carriage bolts through this. I wanted to go back to this previous screen. Carriage bolts with the heads. If you go to Home Depot, you'll see what I mean. The rounded heads, so nothing is sharp against the balls, is on the inside, and my nuts are against the outside with washers and lock washers to hold them in place. Please note that the casters are about an inch off the ground. That allows you to tip the box with the handle that's at the top of the green, the caster side of the box. Look all the way to the top. You'll see a silver handle. Grab the handle, tip it forward before it even touches those wheels, and then tip it onto the wheels, and you can wheel it anywhere you want. This box was designed to hold four balls wide by 4 balls deep. So 16 balls on each level times about 5 levels high. I probably have that math slightly wrong. It might have been 5 balls by 5 balls. I think it's 4 by 4 on the size fives. I have a lot of size fours in here. So there's a lot of young folks in the Hartford area where this is going to be placed who could probably use a ball. It's about 2/3 size fours, about 1/3 size fives right now. That's a lot of balls in there. The balls that are in there, that's 60 balls right now. 20, 40, 60. Yes, almost 60 balls that are in there right now. It's a large box. Okay, another view of it. This is placement next to the stands at the Hartford Athletic. And guest services is going to explain to everybody how this works. You'll see that we've placed the signs now. We printed up signs and placed them behind that plexiglass. If you need a ball, take a ball. If you have a ball, give a ball. That's what the sign says. It explains the Goals Council. It explains Hartford Athletics sponsorship to this. And this ball box is going to be available at every game. It's going to be available at every one of their community events, which are free for anyone to attend in the Hartford area. And this will also be outside the fence line so that anybody who needs a ball can come get a ball. Okay? Hopefully you've enjoyed this 16-minute, 40-second video. Enjoy your day.